is the third talk in the series of lectures on the central nervous system, the periphery nervous system, and the waters they live in. And in this talk we're going to be looking at the cells of the central nervous system and how they work. There are anatomy paintings to go with this, and you can view these on my website. It's good to view them on the website. There's a far better representation of them on my website. And also I'm recording in nature, so you may hear other noises going on. Okay, so here we have a picture of the central nervous system, the cerebrum, the lower brain, the spinal cord, and the cranial fluid around our central nervous system. And the cells we're going to be looking at are the same in the cerebrum, in the lower brain, and in the spinal cord. They're the same cells throughout. And here we have them. Here we have the cells. There's a ventricle. And then here we have the body. This may be in the cerebrum, it may be somewhere in the lower brain, it may be somewhere in the spinal cord. They're the same cells. It's all living, flowing, communicating in water. 99% water, glucose, oxygen, minerals. It's in a sea. The different cells we have here, this is a neuron. We have synapses coming up from other neurons. This is where it communicates through. It's a hollow tube full of cellular fluid, intercellular fluid. That's called an axon. That will communicate a synapse with another neuron or several other neurons. And then we have what are called the glial cells. These are astrocytes, look like sea anemones. The main bedrock of the central nervous system. These are microglial cells. These swim through the sea of the central nervous system and are the immune system. They will congregate around infections or viruses, pathogens. They are intelligent, they move within the water, they have an intelligence, they just go where they're needed, they know where to go, and they go there, and they kill the pathogens, infections, viruses, whatever it is. They just swim through this sea. And then we have myelinated glial cells. They wrap around and around and around the axon. And that's about it. For the last 100 years, the whole of neural science have been based on the neurons. That's all changing now. But let's first look at these neurons and how they work. So here we have two neurons. Got a synapse coming in from another neuron here. These are the same here, carrying on forwards. It's an axon, a hollow tube full of intercellular fluid. This breaks up into smaller and smaller tubes, and this connects to these branches that are coming out of the neuron. These are called dendrites. They're the receptors. They receive the information coming from the other neurons. This goes into the body of the neuron. Here we have the nucleus in the middle, the brain. This assimilates that and sends off electrical charge information along these tubes to another neuron which assimilates it. Now it won't just go to one neuron, it will go off to several other neurons. This will assimilate it, and off it goes, on and on. There are 100 billion neurons in our nervous system, 100 billion. With all of these connections they make, it's something like 100 trillion different patterns, different communications they can make. So there's a lot of communication going on there. It's on quite an electrical level, or that we know of. There's lots of communication we don't know of. So this sets up all this information that travels through the cerebrum, through the lower brain, through the cerebellum at the back, the brain stem down the spine, off through the nerves at lengths, axons going off, taking the charge, the electricity and the communication to the body, and then the body communicates back through the nerves, through the spinal cord, through the brain stem, to the cerebellum, up to the cerebrum, through the thalamus and out into the cerebrum. So you get this communication on an electrical level in the neurons. And this has been what's been investigated for the last 100 years in neuroscience. This is what's looked upon as the communication. But when Einstein died, later, they opened his cranium to find out why he was so clever, why he was so intelligent. And they were expecting to find more neurons or more synapses, or the synapses connected in a different way. Why was this man so intelligent? Why did he have this intelligence? And they didn't find any more neurons, they didn't find any more synapses, they didn't find different patterns of synapses. It was average, same as everybody else. But what Einstein did have was lots more glial cells than was normal. He had much more of these other cells, which up until now have been thought of as connective tissue, helping cells, fillers. Einstein had lots of these, a high percentage of these. And this changed the way they were viewing. This started a line of communication into the glial cells and how they functioned. Until over the last couple of years they've got some insight. Just in the last couple of years they've had some breakthroughs, got insights to how this is working. So even in his death, Einstein managed to instigate a breakthrough in science. Even after he had died, he contributed to a breakthrough in science. So they started looking at these different glial cells. These are astrocytes, microglial cells, myelinated glial cells. They started looking at these cells, and they couldn't really find anything for a long time. And now they grow these cells in trays, and they make cranial fluid, water, glucose, oxygen, minerals. And they grow them in these trays. And then one day these glow sticks, you have at festivals where it's a stick and you break it and two chemicals comes together and it glows green, fluorescent green. Someone decided to put some of this in one of these trays, and then was amazed that this showed up. The glial cells were lighting up in impulses, in waves that go through the tray, in waves in different forms, different directions, and they could see that they were communicating. They couldn't see what the communication was, but they could see them lighting up. So they knew they were communicating. And they didn't have to be touching to communicate. They could have a group of astrocytes in one side of the tray with a gap, with just fluid in it, and a group of astrocyte cells on the other side of the tray. The impulse would start on one side of the tray, it would go through those cells, and it would travel through the cells on the other side of the tray with no physical connection other than the water. And these communications were working in a different way to the neurons. In the neurons it travels along fixed lines. They're like telephone wires, like a landline goes along the landline. With the astrocytes and different glial cells, it's like a cell phone, just broadcasting out in all directions and receiving from all directions. And a communication from a glial cell in one part of the central nervous system can turn up in another part of the central nervous system and pinpointed to an area there without connecting all through it. It was working in a whole myriad of ways that couldn't really be understood. It could be communicated here and received over here. Somehow it triggered something here. So the neurons are landlines, the glial cells are transmitters. They transmit out like a cell phone and they receive like a cell phone, and the medium is travelling through is the water. Communication is happening through the water. The water is the means of communication. But they can't see what the communication is. They can't see what the communication is. It's not electrical. It's not electromagnetic. It's not particles. They don't know what it is. They're saying it's like a sixth sense, a knowing. They just know. They're communicating in a way that cannot be understood in science. They cannot see the transmission. They can see the effect of the transmission, but they can't see the transmission. You can see the transmission in the neurons because it's electrical, and you can measure that. You can't see the transition in the glial cells. So it's a bit like when you get a flock of birds and they're all moving and then they'll turn. They all know, and then they turn. And the distance between the wings stays exactly the same. They all move at exactly the same time. There's a knowing, there's a sixth sense, can't really be understood how they know. And the whole flock, one end and the other end, or a herd of animals, suddenly one will prick up its ears, it's heard something, but the whole herd knows how off at the same time. So it's a knowing that happens through these glial cells. So in a way, Einstein, after he died, instigated this new movement in neuroscience, and now all of the investigation is on that. It's moved away from the neurons. Now they're looking into the glial cells and trying to understand what this communication is. But the interesting thing is that it dovetails beautifully with meditation, healing, because we see the light travelling through the water in all its forms, not just bright light, but all its forms of light travelling through the water. It's transparent, and light on all levels travels through the medium of water much easier than through solids. It will move through solids as well in different ways, but the water becomes a good medium for this light and information to travel through from the earth, from the higher self, the subtle realms, the universal energies, our own internal energies that mirror all of that within ourselves. It's an easier mode to travel through. And now within science they're finding that the main body of communication within this cell, within this system, is also through the water. The glial cells are transmitting through the water. They're also receiving through the water. So it would be hard to imagine that they weren't also picking up the other communications on a higher level, travelling through the waters. And already it's saying in science that they are communicating via a sixth sense, an energy they cannot measure. They can see the effect. They can see the effect of the energy or the transmission, but they can't measure the energy or transmission. It's a sixth sense, it's a knowing. So this dovetails beautifully how we see it in healing and in meditation. I think that's it. I'll talk a bit about the other uses of these cells. So they all communicate, all the glial cells communicate through the water to each other, to the ones around them, but also directly to ones right over here or off and away. And they receive, they transmit and they receive. The main bedrock of the central nervous system are the astrocyte cells. These are glial cells, and as you can see, They've got loads of little tentacles coming on. Now, other than this newfound communication they had and Einstein's intelligence, these are the connective tissue, the central nervous system. There, all these tentacles connect to everything around. Without these, the brain would be a liquid. It would just be a slush, just slushing around within the cranium and within the spine. There would be no form to it. These hold its form. They connect to everything. They hold everything together. And because it's tentacles, water can just flow through. It's like an aquarium. These are the microglial cells. These are the immune system. They will swim through all the glial cells, all the capillaries, all the neurons. Wherever there's an infection, they will go there. They are intelligent. The water is intelligent. They are intelligent. And they just turn up. Wherever there's an infection, they find all of these little microglial cells congregating and multiplying around the infection. One, they'll congregate there, but also they produce more of themselves there. So they go there. And then the myelinated glial cells, these wrap around the axons. The whole last part of these lectures we spend with these myelinated glial cells. They are quite incredible, wondrous. So we spend the last part of the lectures looking into those and the water geometry within those and the communications and on all levels through those. So the neurons are communicating telephone wires, and the glial cells are communicating in cell phones, and they're also the glial cells are affecting the way the neurons are working. The tentacles from these go into the synapses and affect the synapses, the tentacles from the glial cells. Also the myelinated glial cells affect the axons. And the glial cells is, one, it's on a higher level of communication, but also responsible for more. What they're saying now is that the one glial cell, one astrocyte, will be responsible for 20,000 times more communication than one neuron. And in a way they don't understand in this knowing, maybe more lateral thinking, but they're intelligent, the water is intelligent, the energy is coming to the water is intelligent, and it connects. You get this transformer. You've got the higher energies and our higher energies. And then you can easily see how this downgrades to the glial cells, and then this communicates with the neurons, and then this comes out through the nerves, and then this connects to the body. You have this whole dialogue all the way through. Okay. Alright, that really is it. Okay. So, you're just closing your eyes and breathing, feeling the fluids through the whole central nervous system, the water, and the communication of the earth, the higher self, our own internal energies through the waters of the central nervous system and the cells as well. The sun is coming out. That's the side of the van is clicking at the minute as the sun is shining on it. And then this is all also communicating with the glial cells. They're communicating and knowing. They just know, they understand, and there's a soft form of communication. They receive and transmit through the water. This connects to the neurons, which are landlines in patterns. And both the glial cells and the neurons travel off down through the nerves. We'll look at this later. And then just feeling the more water side of it and the energies of it shining through the water, through the whole central nervous system, the cerebrum, the lower brain, the spinal cord, and off, down, through the nerves. Allow it to connect to the nerves and out into the body. Okay, thank you. In the next talk we're going to look at how this whole system eliminates, how the toxins leave, how the waters leave, where all the water goes to. Very interesting talk, highly recommended. Okay, thank you.